Boom City. Boom, 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 boom. All right, we should technically be live, I believe. Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Let me make sure that I've also got plenty of hard drive space for the recording. Because if I don't, it's like, where'd it go? Where'd it
Definitely
go?
didn't lose the lore talk that way once.
The nice thing is that at a minimum, it's also backed up online. So worst case scenario, I just have to go let it like play out and do its thing. But it's still like I'd rather just get it right the first time.
Yep.
Yeah, just borrow some of Elio's hard drive space.
Is that those hard drives behind you?
Lore
guys got to have hard drive space. Lore guys, like you got to be like, well, yeah,
that's like 52 terabytes.
Thanks to Issa, we have a NAS server on his end and on my end, and we've collected almost every cutscene in the game at this point. So now we just have it ready to go.
That's exactly how you have to do it, because it's like, whew. But that work, like I think that's one of the things that ended up like setting. Hey, what's up, Gizmo? Setting Ethis like backwards one time, because it's like also like he lost like all of that, so you got to have. I was like, oh man, that sucks. You know.
Yep. You with the early days, it was definitely I'll just record for each video, and then you realize you're spending 4 hours to get a third or half of the shots you need, and you're like, okay, this is not sustainable.
Yeah, clearly. Yeah, or you're like, oh man, you just feel like, like how much time did I spend on it? Because then you have to go like, wait, was that? Where was this here? And then, so having it archived, like that's one of the things. I don't know. I was actually hanging out with my parents last night. That's one of the things that I was like, I need to spend time with my mom and just like legitimately go through and help her categorize all of her pictures and media, which is at terabytes at this point. So it's like, Jesus. I literally be like, all right, guys, what are you doing this summer? I'm helping mom. Like, cause like she has copies of copies of copies. She doesn't know what she has. And so she'll just like, I'll go get another hard drive and like try to back up everything. And so she's constantly out of space. And because she doesn't know what she has because she hasn't categorized it, labeled it, and that's how you gotta, like when you capture gameplay footage, like you gotta categorize it if you ever want to use it, because then you'll be like, wait, did I capture that? Or oh man.
Yeah, literally our entire system is like by like patch cycle, and everything has its cutscene name from the unending journey, so it can be like just Control F with ease. It's like once you have it, it's nice. The entry work to do so can be a bit, but
oh yeah. It's 100%.
Hi everyone.
Hey, what's up, Neri? Hey, what's up? Hey,
nice to be here.
Oh, it's great to have you guys. I know that ends up being kind of like this is a global cast, just based on all the different time zones. So
yeah,
it's like
seriously,
we've been kind of doing like the podcast like once a month right now, because it's like like there's not all that to like to dive into, but we'll have So I was like, oh, this would be perfect because. We'll take good. Chris is here too, and we got the team.
Hey, now it's a party.
Now it's a party. We got everybody. Excellent.
All over the world and including in Vesper Bay.
Yes.
Yeah.
All the way.
I think I'm done Prey returning.
They he only think. Yeah.
They sent me there 19 times. It can't possibly be more than 19. We keep a counter on the screen.
Well, does it count for Rising Stones? Because I know there's at least one.
No.
Okay,
no,
just Waking Sands.
Rising Stones is fine. I like Mordona.
Yes.
It's how many times do I have to pray return to the place that, by the way, canonically should not have an Aetheryte. I don't care what Lolorito claims and what the Scions claim as far as political stuff. That is somebody making it about them. There is no logical reason for an Aetheryte to be there, regardless of Lolorito and the Scions.
Yeah.
So, like, they are making it about them. It's like somebody saying, oh, yeah, I got all red lights today. Yes, traffic's about you. Like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody, can we just go around and make sure I get good audio in from everybody? So let's start with you, Elio.
Yeah. Testing 1, 2, 3. Of all the money that I've had, I spent it in good company.
Archivist.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Naneri.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Awesome. And then I already heard Chris. So this is excellent. Now I would just say to those we're on Twitch and on YouTube, y'all are able to hear everybody okay? I just put out that question.
he adjusted volumes for the podcast version. So over here on Twitch, you guys are just getting the raw experience. So any of you that heard his sound check and you're like, that didn't change for us. Enjoy the audio version. It will be better.
Much cleaner. I gotta much cleaner. Ideally. Let's see here.
You guys got your own command because you guys stream over on YouTube. So
Yeah. Yes. It's nice to have it kind of unified.
and they're behind me, so I've been able to enjoy those as like these they're re-clears for me, even though I haven't done all the story. Because they're talking about Endwalker stuff, and I'm like, yeah, I've done that. And they're in ARR, and I'm like, oh, I've done that too. So as long as I stay ahead of them, I can enjoy their streams.
It's been really fun, both with you and with other viewers who have been trying to replay ahead of us, who are just like sitting there like, oh, because I knew obviously the attack on the Waking Sands happens, but it's been so long since I played AR, I forgot it happens right at that moment. So I was in the middle of like joking with stream, and then all of a sudden everything just dropped. But like clearly, like 4 people in the chat had been like, "Oh, we know, we're waiting."
It had so before we actually jump into the podcast though, so you cleared ARR and then you're re-clearing it. What kind of gap was that for you, like in time?
I cleared it during Stormblood during 4.x, probably sometime around 4.4.
Yeah.
And also when I was clearing it, I was in a weird stage of my life where I was clearing it real fast. Like I wasn't quite skipping, but I was going through, zooming through it. So while the details are like not missing, it's like the whole experience is kind of like a jumble, and like a lot of it gets more like I'm reminded of it through rereading Encyclopedia Eorzean Volume 1, or sometimes more than my actual experience of doing it.
Hey, what's up, sweetie?
Can everyone have a piece of candy? Just one.
Can everybody have a piece of candy?
Just one.
That's a great question for Mom.
Cotton candy.
Why are y'all here? Like, what is this? Is this,
I'm having a party.
is this the candy shop? Mom's got candy downstairs.
We just need one piece of candy for everyone in their goodie bag.
Oh, that sounds nice.
We're having
But
a party.
yeah, I'm not going to give you candy and then send you downstairs to torture Mom. Well, because y'all get crazy when you get candy.
No, we don't.
You don't?
I saved mine.
Oh, you save yours.
Yeah, in this bucket.
Oh, that's cool. That's smart. Got to protect it. All right, I love you. I'm just handing out candy. Like, absolutely not. Guys, if you're watching this in archive or live, be sure to like over on YouTube. It's a great way to help support these things out. I got to get better at that. Like, legitimately, I get like 50 to 60% more likes by saying it. I'll get like one comment or like, I hate when YouTubers ask for likes. And I'm like, oh my gosh, man. Like, but
that counts in as 60% increased engagement, so it's fine.
Yeah. That's man, that's ain't that the freaking truth? Oh, I that is also a thing I'm not historically good at, and I'm getting better at it. But
Yeah.
I'm always worried about that comment too. But if I just remind myself, well, that's still engagement, then it's a lot easier.
Yeah, technically, this would be a size of a full party if we were doing PvP. Like now that we've got 5-man party sizes and stuff going on.
Oh
So
yeah, we just got to do first in conflict.
What if the new dungeon thing is 5-mans?
Ooh, that's gonna
Dude,
be
I would
They said 1 to
love
4,
that.
I think. I think they said 1 to 4, but you know.
I would love 5-man dream in that freaking those adventure plates and let's go, man. Like, let's go. All right, you guys, we all ready to podcast?
I think we're ready to podcast.
Perfect. Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. And then we're good there. Let me bring up this. And yeah, it's been a little bit. So let's see if I'm rusty or whatnot. But all right, here we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Crystal Core Radio. I am your host, Brian, and joining me, we have a roundtable, a new full party size 5-man team doing some crystalline conflict podcasting today. Only we're actually going to be talking about more lore, story, and so much in the world of Final Fantasy XIV. Joining me is the crew from Eorzean Archives, a lore-focused Final Fantasy XIV channel. And if you aren't subscribed to them, you absolutely should be. And also we have Chris, who has been crushing some story as a world famous, we'll just call him that, story skipper, coming in playing Shadowbringers and Endwalker. His experience going into Final Fantasy ARR has been telling. And if I might not say so myself, the thing I'm so excited about is here after this, going to be jumping into Crystal Tower. So if you're not following over on Twitch, Like that's what I'm going to be doing today is watching him experience Crystal Tower. And soon he'll be stepping into Heavensward, which I'm so excited about. Chris, I'm going to go to you first, and then I would like to do Roundtable. Let everybody give themselves a good, proper introduction. If I haven't, hopefully I haven't butchered it yet. But Chris, man, what's up with you? And then Roundtable it.
I just finished 2.4 yesterday, and you did make me wonder. I wonder how many countries I collected hate comments from for being a story skipper. I didn't keep track. Like I should have had a board with the little pins on it, and we could have slowly added them up. Because yes, being a story skipper is not always popular in the community, but I have enjoyed the game for a long time, and this is just adding to that. I just met Moen Breda yesterday for the first time, and then people are asking in chat like, "Is this a spoiler stream?" And it's like, yes and no. Like I'm from the future, so like I've read the last chapter, but please don't tell me about any of the in-between chapters. So there's like a tragic reality to that. So yeah, and then the only thing you missed in between now in Heavensward stuff is I haven't done Binding Coils and I haven't done 2.5. So I need to do Crystal Tower today so that I can clear 2.5 in one sitting. But yeah, I'm excited.
All right. And so for those listening live and also as a part of the audio version of this, be sure to like, subscribe, share, all that wonderful stuff. So Elio, why don't we start with you, and then we'll go Archivist and then Neri. So tell us about yourself and what you do.
Yeah, so I am Elio Forceron, and I am one of the Archons for the Eorzean Archives. I am the primary YouTube content creator. When it comes to that, I super into Final Fantasy XIV lore. Been playing for the better part of 4-5-ish years at this point. And yeah, that's kind of the brief overview.
Archivist.
Okay, well, I'm Isidore Lanverley, and I am basically a real life support for this whole endeavor. I help with the tech needs and do some script runs, and also handle the back end for our website.
And then Neri.
As a side note on that, just because that drastically undersells this, the amount of one of the hard things about a game with this much lore is that if you want to reference something, it's not just going to the end and knowing which cutscene. There's a lot of things not in cutscenes in the end. There's a lot of references. Even having all those, it would be hard to kind of categorize and tag so that next time they make some reference. This is a game that's really good about planting seeds. And some of those seeds have been in the ground since 2013, 2014, and haven't grown into anything. And so when we do something like hypothetically go to a zone like Summerford Farms, and we've been there at level 8, like, how do you go back without having to spin up new footage? And so having a direct support team is something that, like, when you look at people who have done it without, somebody like Ethis Asher over the years, and people are like, man, like, why is Ethis Asher's content so slow? Even when he was cranking it out, it's slow because, like, he was doing both of those jobs. So just to shout that out. Incredible.
It's a lot of responsibility, and there's a ton more things Issa does too, where like you'll take care of social media, you'll handle socializing with people when I'm a little bit caught up in everything else. So
yeah, Issa's amazing.
Hard job.
I'm the Neri. I'm doing most of the writing on the site and some of the YouTube stuff with Elio, mostly the Endwalker stuff and some theory videos. I started playing in ARR, but took a break over Stormblood, and then came back in Shadowbringers.
Well, welcome back for Shadowbringers. That's a nice little kind of break to kind of get caught up and step into for sure. So, all right, guys, if you guys aren't following the Eorzean Archives, especially over on YouTube, be sure to do so. They should be tagged. If nothing else, I'll make sure that all the links and everything get put in appropriately for the archive of this, as well as the audio version. So if you guys are listening in the audio version, thank you. Yeah, it's always good to kind of see those kind of stats, etc., as we dive into it. Now, I want to say thanks to some special support helping make these podcasts possible. Fred Nectetti, WG Productions, Red Light Gamer, Red Rocket, Dark Wolf, Psycho, and Cordell, helping to fund the podcast, cover the costs, especially of the YouTube will like take it for free. Like it's like I can put up all these on YouTube, but putting up an MP3, everybody wants a little bit of that money, so it does cost for that. So we do help. We do thank you for our supporters helping make that possible. If you feel like ever joining as a member, note that they are going to help make more podcasts possible. And that is the challenge to you guys. But let's talk Final Fantasy XIV. Obviously, we just got patch 6.15. While essentially, like, as we dive into it, like, this isn't necessarily a spoiler stream, but this also is not going to be spoiler free. I don't want anybody to feel like they can't say something that they don't want to say. So if you guys are listening, just note that as we dive into it, we got a bunch of different topics to go into it. First and foremost, I'd like to get some patch 6.15 impressions from you guys. Second topic, I'd like to talk about new jobs that you guys would like to see. Are we starting to see hints in the game already about these new jobs? Kind of talking about that as we go to the road 7.0. And then I'd like to finally close with kind of a Yoshi P interview in which he talks about some of the things he wants to see in post 6.1. So we'll have that kind of as our big kind of like podcast subjects and topics. I'd like to start with you, Elio. 6.15. Have you had a chance to play it? Like, is this something that like, overall, where are you at?
Yeah, so I've done everything but Hildebrand so far. And I've, adored it. I mean this in the best way. It's what I expected, right? It's what was promised, and it was basically what was expected. From the custom deliveries with Emelians being shrewd, hilarious, and the whole thing being kind of cute, what you expect. On top of that, the Omega was such a beautiful continuation of the storyline of that raid series, mixed with a continuation of the themes and ideas at the heart of what happened during the MSQ and Endwalker, which they've just got better and better at, like tying side quests into things going on in the MSQ. Just wonderful. And then the Arkasodra tribal quest was a tribal quest that was well written, and it's cute, and it's like cute and funny, and everybody's loving on those hippos. So I guess no surprises, but then also it's not even like it's 6.1 or 6.2. It's the 0.5. It's not gonna be a huge surprise.
What about you, Archivist?
So I have not gotten to do the turn-ins with the Emelians, but I have gone through all the other stuff, and so far, like you said, it's been about where I thought. I'm really interested in seeing what they do with Tataru's Grand Adventures, based on what we got to see from the start. So, wondering who we might see from, say, Heavensward. That would be great.
Yeah. I'm getting a little bit of like kind of a robot voice from you, just heads up. So I don't know if you need to look at anything on your end, but I'm just going to let you know. I was just like, all right, I could hear you and understand you. It's just, there's a weird kind of fragment that I'm not
always try unplugging it and plugging it back in.
Have you? Welcome to the podcast of IT support, restarting systems.
It worked 80% of the time.
It does. That's what, like, when you work in a help desk, it's like, all right, like, this is the step one. Is it plugged in? And then it's like, turns out it's not. Naniri, how about you? What's your 6.15 experience so far?
So I've been enjoying it so far. I'm always really happy to see more Tataru content. She's one of my favorite scions, even if most people apparently don't like her all that much. So yeah, I love that. I love the Arkasodra quest. I think the hippo's cool. I think that the minion is one of the cuter minions we've gotten from the Beast Tribe quests. I loved it.
And then Chris, like you and I, we sat down and talked about it yesterday, and that video actually premiered prior to us doing this podcast. But going into it, as you prepare for the Crystal Tower, like, what is your overall like attack plan going forward from here?
So I've done all but Hildy, and that's because I'm not caught up on Hildy. So I couldn't do it. Couldn't do it if I wanted to. I think from a 6.15 standpoint, I really enjoyed all the Omega lore throughout Endwalker. For anybody that doesn't remember 2013, because it was long ago, Omega is first referenced in I think 2.3, 2.2, and it's referenced as like a callback. It's referenced as like a thing that they've all known about, and they're just like, oh yeah, you don't know about that? And so to see that get set up so far in advance, and then I did this whole Omega quest line where like I'm walking around with our little Roomba buddy, and it's a long quest line with 6.15. So from an attack plan standpoint, like I'm just looking forward to filling in the gaps, because like now I'm like still doing the current stuff, and like I need them to meet in the middle.
It's gonna be such a strange experience.
The Tataru thing, I don't agree. I do agree that 6.15 was what it was promised to be. The Tataru thing was really short. Like it feels like maybe they should have announced the Omega stuff and then said, hey, by the way, there's a Chitauri thing too. Like the fact that it was referenced in live letters and it was kind of given the same amount of screen space as Omega, the Omega quest line. If anything, I felt like it was given more. It felt really short. I don't know if you guys agree with that.
No, I think it did. I think for my money, because I think you're totally right. I think it was definitely co-equal. And I think part of that also probably came from not wanting to spoil like too much about the Omega either. But like in my mind, because I wasn't super worried about it or looking forward to that one, I didn't mind that, and I was so happy with the Omega, I didn't end up minding. But I think you are right.
Okay. It felt quick.
I haven't gotten to the Omega or Chitauri yet because I'm basically focusing on anything that's not level 90, right? So even with like Hildebrand, I finished Hildebrand for Heaven's Word like prior to the expansion, and so I have still the Stormblood. Sorry, I guess it was, the Stormblood Hildebrand, and then he took off Shadowbringers, and now he's back in. So I'm excited to be able to kind of I'm excited to be kind of behind the curve on that in a way. I really struggled with Hildebrand in Heaven's Word because while I love the comedy, one of the driving rewarding factors in ARR was the trial fights. Like they were unique, they were different, they had it was more playful and less like serious, but it was still like you had to know the mechanics, right? So they were able to do things that they have brought in later. Like obviously turning you into a chicken and turning you into a frog. Like I felt like it was very Final Fantasy-esque in terms of its trial. So I really I was like, oh man, there's a new trial and I can't wait to go do that. I'm going to make sure that I'm staying caught up on Hildebrand. And then getting into Heaven's Word, there never was that trial. And finally they introduced one with Stormblood, and I was like, that was the only thing I felt was missing within Heaven's Word. And it ended up being something where I was just like, I'll get to this later. And having finished it, I was like, yeah, that was great. Like it's Hildebrand. It's like, I love the comedy. I love the timing. I love the characters. They're able to be very playful, and it's kind of it's fun to have that, especially within how Endwalker landed, and especially with how Shadowbringers landed. Like I felt like there were some really big moments in that story. And so speaking of which, like obviously, Elio, you already said in the pre-show you're talking about like you're playing through ARR again. When did all of you guys start with Final Fantasy? Do we have any 1.0 players here on the panel? Or like, I know that Neri said that they played 2.0, took a break, but I didn't really get like, when did y'all enter into this, and what brought you into Final Fantasy 14 specifically? And we'll do the same thing. Actually, we'll start with Archivist so I can also test your audio.
All right, so I did play 1.0, and then I immediately hated it and went away until like 2.1. I waited for everybody to play 2.0 and tell me that everything was better. And then I came back. But yeah, I took a big giant break, and obviously I super regret that now. I will forever not have that mount. But
you made the best decision with the information given at the time. I mean, the discounted subscription is a literal perpetual apology. Like imagine if you did something so awful, you had to send somebody an apology card in the mail once a month
with $5
for the rest of your life.
Well, and think about people arguing for legacy servers, and the only quote we have on that is nightmare.
And gifts that the only two gifts that circulate of Yoshi P disappointed are when he gets asked if we'd ever get to play 1.0 again, and will he give us a clear stance on allowing add-ons? Because the people who ask that's what they want. They're not asking, oh, can you make it clearer? He's made it clear. They're saying, no, can you make it clear differently? And both of them are the same face.
We have one of those as an emote in our Discord.
As an 11 veteran, like there doesn't need to be a 1.0 because it didn't have like the content. It was obviously very lacking in many things. Now by 1.23, I thought they actually had like a really good, like I was like, okay, we're moving forward and we're about to go into 2.0. So lots of excitement to see what that meant. But like, if anything else, as a veteran of 1.0 and a veteran of 11, I would rather them do like when people ask for a 1.0 legacy, it's like, no. Like remake 11. Like if you want that sandbox experience, because 1.0 is a sandbox MMORPG, which turns out sandbox MMOs aren't as popular as a theme park. It's like they're just like they aren't as much as like the sandbox players are like craving the next big one that will come and
good.
it's the messiah of the MMORPG, which I think almost like as MMO players, like that is maybe something that's built into the genre. Always that hope, always that like looking forward to the whatever this next big thing ends up being. But the reality is it's the person who shows up to work for 10 years, busts their butt, makes a little progress here and there, and eventually it's like, oh, I got noticed, for doing the thing over and over again repeatedly. Well, go ahead.
I feel like gamers as a whole, that's true, and MMO fans, it's like even worse. You're always looking to that horizon. Like I simultaneously feel like I know a lot of people who play a bunch of games looking for an game, but never like find it. So it's just this perpetual hunt.
So Naniri, what brought you to 14?
So I was playing a lot of WoW and Star Wars: The Old Republic. I still play Star Wars, but not WoW anymore. And I've always been some MMO kid. I started with Guild Wars and WoW, and then moved on to Final Fantasy XIV because a friend recommended me to. A friend who I actually played through Heavensward with, and we all went back when that came out to re-level all the new classes together in a group, 3 of us, when we spammed like Sunken Temple of Khan like 1,000 times to get to level. But yeah, I started in the last patch of ARR actually, so right at the very end of 2.x, and thought it was okay, but it was only with Heavensward that my love for the game started.
I think that's true for a lot of people. I have a deep love of ARR, and so usually it always kind of is interesting when I run into somebody who comes in. It's like who really is struggling with ARR, and it's like I thought Heavensward knocked it out of the park. Like it was such a great expansion, but like not everybody's going to agree with that. No, Elio, like when did you like? You said you played through ARR in Stormblood and ran the 4-point series. But what brought you into the game? What actually got you to purchase, download the free trial, whatever? Like, what got you into it?
So I was always a really, really big Final Fantasy fan since I was a little kid. It was my earliest games. And I saw 1.0, but I was too broke to be able to afford it. So I never got to get into it. But then years later, I had a friend who, like I was saying about people searching for that game, I have a pair of friends who are, a married couple who's constantly searching for like the MMO that they want to be like their MMO. Mm-hmm. So they picked up 14 and they're like, come join us. I'm like, okay. And so I hopped in, and it seemed like I had been wanting to try it. It seemed like now was a good time. And then I struggled hard with The Realm Reborn because of its pacing. This was before some of the truncation. This was before, and even still, it's a constant point of discussion with a lot of people in our community, like the struggles with The Realm Reborn. But I think you're right with Heavensward. Heavensward is in and of itself a great story, and also is such a step up from specifically 2.0. 2.x improves, but like Heavensward is such a step up that it like is a force multiplier in how much it's enjoyed. In my mind, anyways.
For me, as a story skipper, so you guys are referencing a lot of like how you're feeling about the game talking to you. For me, as a story skipper, this was a game enjoyed as a post-WoW experience. And so coming from WoW, one of the issues with WoW was the amount of things that were required of me and made that like I had to play this job for the privilege of enjoying it. And I was paying them. And so like, as I got pushed out of WoW through just like resentment and fatigue, 14 is so easy to be caught up on. Like you could take off a whole patch cycle and you come back and the gear is just kind of handed to you. And you're not like, well, let me go out and do the math on this gear. And now I got to reforge it. Oh crap. I got this other piece. I have to reforge. I think I'm below hit cap now. Hold on. Let me do the math. And it's like, no, it just handles it. And so it was just such a relief to just get back to the game. It's kind of like when like something on my iPhone just works, and I have a friend that like programs a bunch of stuff for his Android, and he's like, yeah, but I can do all this stuff after I do all this setup. But I don't want to do the setup. Like maybe you have more free time than me, but like just because I can doesn't mean I want to. Sometimes I just want something to work. And so there was so much about 14 that just relieved that fatigue, and the group sizes shrunk. So in WoW, I mean, I've been in 40-man raids, I've been in 10-man raids. And so like, it was always like, you're just short. But when we came over to 14, it's 4-man and 8-man content. And it did feel like a lot of times in ARR, Brian and I would somehow still magically end up at 7. Like you're always at just X-1.
I know.
But, like still, I have these distinct memories of ARR playing with my brothers who don't play 14 anymore, and playing with Brian and some of his friends who, like, that's the only way I know them. And so it was such a cherished part in my life that, like, you guys are talking about force multiplier with AR with Heavensward, but for me, Heavensward, like, the game got better, but that's where some of my friends that I shared ARR with started to fade. And so for me, it kept it more level because the game was stepping up as my own personal community fell away, which is kind of what pushed Brian and I into content creation. Is we wanted to talk about 14. And as our friends quit, we just started telling our wives, and shockingly, they didn't want to hear it. And so, like, you guys have got to get on the internet and find somebody else. Like, I don't want to hear it. And so, like, I don't know. I assume Brian has a direction that he's taken this podcast, but I just want to know, like, how did you three end up together for Eorzean Archives?
That's a great story.
It is.
Do you want us to tell it, Brian, or did you have anything you wanted to do?
These are conversational podcasts, so like we'll get back on track when we want, but it's all about having a good conversation. Go ahead.
So I relate to a lot of that. So one thing, just quick preface: I grew up playing a lot of different MMOs. WoW, Guild Wars 2, Guild Wars, all those. So I had background in MMOs. So I was coming into 14, and what I was used to is, despite MMOs being social, I'm used to playing them solo because my friend groups always fall away almost immediately. So that happened with 14 in a lot of ways. And so I was getting, but I wasn't leaving it. I was like, I'm still loving this. I'm getting into it more. I adore the story. And so I'd always wanted to do YouTube. I had always loved people like, your Vati videos, your Ethos, and so I was like, okay, so I got to do content creation. None of my partners want to hear me talking about 14 lore anymore. Luckily, one of my friends initially wanted to do it with me. He since has moved on to other things. He's teaching in Japan, but he accidentally or was seeking out people on Reddit and ran into Niniri and Issa. And then they got in contact. And then we got in contact. And then it's just snowballed over this past year. Just such random happenstance.
Yeah, definitely. I think what pushed me into content creation, like the idea of the lore guides that I was writing before we all hooked up, was the decline of Ethic's content, the fact that he wasn't making YouTube videos anymore. That's what pushed me into it. I saw that space. I loved Ethic's duty guides so much, so I just wanted to sort of fill that gap.
Yeah, like that was like I think a real loss, like, for the community, and I get it, right? Like, because when it comes down to it, like when you start to look at the numbers, and that's one of the things, like when we talk about content creation, is like there becomes a reality, right? Like there's I'm a fan and I'm enjoying this, and then all of a sudden there becomes now there's a demand, and then I don't know if you guys feel this, but then I remember, like, there's a lot of guilt that I would feel, like, that, hey, yeah, that guide isn't done, and people are like, oh man, I really can't wait for in my case, like, this controller guide. But I know, like, in Ethic's case, it's like, well, like, we're not like a massive community. Like, while there's like now 24 million plus like players, not all of those are consuming content on YouTube. So like when what Chris and I have talked about in the past is kind of the ceiling, and we would look at, like, what's the current ceiling within the Final Fantasy YouTube space as kind of like, okay, that's your theoretical max, and that's going to keep growing. But like at its core, like, you're not going to sit here and say, hey, I released this video and it's, every video I make is, bringing in enough money that it covers the time that I spend on making these. So there's a passion project, but then I think what you end up seeing is that within it, like, I was like, yeah, I was always hungry for Ethic's content, but it's not that it comes out every day, nor could it, because he's got to feed himself. He's got to, like, you have absolute needs. And so then there's this weird transitional period of, like, a lot of people are like, oh, now, like, you need money to do this thing that you were doing for free. Like, oh, the passion's gone. It's like, no, it's just a logistical problem that I'm trying to solve, is that you guys want more of this. I like doing this. I'd like to give you more of this. But then all of a sudden it's like, well, where do I find that kind of time? And either the quality will dip or the volume kind of dips, because, you can't, nobody is going to be able to, like, just eat, thumbs up on videos. And, like, it's like, yeah, at some point you're like, your well wishes, have to be back by support. And there are obviously very generous people who are willing to support. But when it comes down to, like, Ethic's case, especially, I was like, yeah, like, there's just not enough. Like, at some point you're like, how do you grow from that because at some point you're going to want to maybe do other things. And how do you experiment in that regards? Have y'all felt like any of that guilt? Because I feel the guilt.
100%. No question. I mean, the realities of YouTube content creation, just like in terms of production schedule, like you're talking about, and also the monetary, like money, like just takes time, like you say. I feel guilty even doing these MSQ replays somewhat, because I know that by spending, basically at least 9 hours a week doing that for the streams, it's 9 hours I'm not doing on a second video.
Yeah.
And so I totally feel that. And it's complicated. The whole thing's just like, it's really rewarding. And then for my part, I'm still very passionate about it, but I feel bad. Like, I haven't got to a lot of job videos yet that people have been asking about. And I'm like, yeah, I plan to get to them. No question. But also I can only produce one video a week. And sometimes I need that video to be something that I want to do rather than something that's going to do good views.
Right.
And that's the other thing, is that when you're doing a Final Fantasy XIV lore YouTube channel, you are a niche within a niche. You are in the niche of MMO, specifically 14, and then you're doing the lore stuff. Like, I'm not a Mr. Happy, I'm not a Mione, I'm not a, so like that is yet another further level of complication.
So as they talk about adding support for things in game, right? There's kind of an Eorzean archive being added to the game, right? They're bringing the Encyclopedia Eorzea as a feature. How could the game document that better? Like I just have so many questions as somebody that's going back through it. Like I don't, like, as a constructive criticism, they're clearly interested in saying like, hey, we want you to have access to this. We don't expect you to memorize it. We don't expect you to catch it the first time. I think New Game Plus was a massive leap forward. I think this new encyclopedia feature is a massive leap forward. I think the ability to view things from the end is wonderful, but like, it's still, even with this and a YouTube ping on my other browser and Gamer Escape up on another browser, like, I still just have questions. Yesterday I did a quest for Ironheart to get unlock Halatali. I was like, that name sounds familiar. So then I went and Googled him, and it's like, oh, Robert Ironheart did our map, which I just talked about on another podcast about like what's wrong with the 14 map, because the geography is all sorts of messed up. And then it turns out like the sightseeing logs are also given to us from Ironhearts. It's like, where are we supposed to catch that? Or is that just flavor? Like, as somebody that's never been into lore,
yeah,
maybe I'm doing it wrong. Maybe it's like, no, that's part of the journey. But like, it feels this should be more accessible.
So the thing is, I would say with something like that, right? I think the idea is that 1% of people are supposed to catch that, and it's supposed to be a fun tidbit. And we know because of how Koji made 14, like how Koji was, is that he was always thinking about those hyper details, things like that. But he was also thinking about the macro. I do think that 14 as a whole does a really good job of striking a balance, which is you can't expect the majority of people, in my mind anyways, to care about the minutia, because most people don't, or at least like they don't until they're really engaged. And so I think what 14 does is make sure that everything that's a vital import for you to have a deep appreciation of the MSQ is present. And then everything that's like that next step down is relatively accessible. And then the next step down is like a pain in the ass to find. But then like there's also no way that you don't make that not a pain in the ass and then make it harder to search for everything, right? Like, imagine if you had a search term for every NPC with ease, but that was like one more thing on your utility bar. That's like, then you just start building cruft of like things for people to search for. So that said, I want that. So that's not an argument that it shouldn't at all be, but that's where tools like Garland tools are helpful. But that's not, that's not in 14, and that's not Square Enix made. So that doesn't solve the issue of it being in game.
Yeah, if they'd like to give me, the Mass Effect Codex, I'm certainly not going to complain. But yeah, there is, the stuff that you only find out if you happen to be a fisherman and also happen to actually look at your fishing log.
Yeah, so much lore with the fish. It's crazy.
Yeah, huge amount of lore with the fish.
Fish lore, baby. Absolutely. All right, we ready to move into kind of one of the two big topics that I'm excited about? Okay, excellent. Let's go here. All right, hello everyone. If you're joining us as a part of this special highlight over here on Work to Game, be sure to smash that like button, subscribe over to the Eorzean Archives if you haven't already. We're going to be talking about kind of new jobs as we build into our road to 7.0, and that is in part due to Yoshi P's recent interviews and talking about the idea of creating something unique within Final Fantasy XIV And I think there's some friction and some, because everybody has a favorite job, especially if you start looking at tactics, if you start looking at past Final Fantasy games, everybody has a job that maybe isn't yet in Final Fantasy XIV. But as we've seen with some jobs, those can come with preconceived notions of how that job should feel in play. And that doesn't necessarily always going to translate into Final Fantasy XIV's battle system specifically. So we thought it'd be kind of fun to talk about what new jobs do we want to see in Final Fantasy XIV, whether they're unique, what role they would feel. Are there already hints that are that the lore has established? So we thought, what better way to ask with the lore guys over at the Eorzean Archives to cover this. I open it up to anybody who wants to jump in first. It can be high level, like I just want a role that's like this, or a specific job from any of the Final Fantasy past jobs. And then I'd like to hear why you'd want to see that work within 14 and how maybe you would have it work within the battle system.
Issa and Yanir, you guys want to go first? Because I'll talk forever.
Neri, go ahead.
Okay, my pick is I've seen other people parrot it, but personally I've not seen a great amount of support for it, which is Green Mage from the Tactics series, which is essentially a sort of a support and debuff mage, focusing on debuffing enemies, casting buff spells essentially. Obviously, it would need to be changed to fit into the game, but I think that could be workable into the system. Also, I suppose predictably by looking at Neri, the character, green is my favorite character, favorite color. So I'm just really a big fan of that, partially because it occurred to me and then I sort of hyperfixated on it. But yeah, that and Beastmaster and Chemist.
So as a follow-up, when you see, because like Beastmaster was kind of teased as a limited job, which Chris and I are both like hoping that we'll see additional limited jobs so we can have a better, clear definition of what a limited job is. Right now, it's just limited equals blue mage, as opposed to like limited is this different system that has these types of options. But outside of that, would you see Chemist as a limited, or would you? And I use the term curated for every other job. So like, what's your thoughts there?
I would see Chemist as a curated or a full job personally. I think it would work on a system similar maybe to the Astrologian cards and the Royal Road and all of that stuff, mixing certain elements of potions would be the flavor, I suppose, to cast different spells in finger brackets.
Yeah.
Would that be the role of a healer?
I would think healer, maybe a support-focused sort of DPS spellcaster, but healer would be my pick.
All right. Who's next?
Issa, you got one?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with a popular one here, the Corsair.
Yeah.
I really want a kind of red mage feel brought to range DPS, so I'll actually play them. But a saber and a flintlock pistol. Come on, let's go to Limsa. Let's be pirates. Everybody loves pirates, right? Have a nice little system there where you're actually running down a gauge instead of bringing a gauge up. So when your flintlock gauge goes down, that's when your melee combo gets empowered.
Nice.
We have a Corsair job icon already in the game.
Yeah, the Musketeer symbol.
It's ready.
Yeah.
I know.
That was supposed to be in 1.0.
It's for anybody that wants
literally
to
next to the Marauder Guild.
It's in the Marauders Guild. So you can go downstairs and it's right there over the door.
Yeah. No, the Corsair would be fun. And oh, sorry, actually, Issa, are you done?
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay.
The platform is yours, Elio. Pontificate
Thank you.
for us.
I'm rather verbose, so. But yeah, if anyone knows me, they know that the biggest one I've been arguing for a long time is Geomancer. By and large, because much like when it came to Reaper or some of the other jobs, there's a lot of pre-existing lore set up to assume that it should be a job, especially if we go to Hingashi at some point. which we've only ever been to Kugane, so we haven't been to Hingashi proper. The thing about Hingashi is it also makes sense as a staging ground to the New World or Mericidia, which are likely places for a 7.0 and 8.0, etc. So whether Geomancer 7.0 or not is, up in the air. But the other like primary thing I tend to think about is what makes sense in terms of the pattern of job release, which means that the next job in theory should be a caster or a range. If we assume one, let's say this should be caster, range, DPS, or maybe scouting melee, because we did just get a melee with Reaper. So I'm of the mind most likely that we would get a caster and range DPS as our next two for 7.0. But, they could do whatever they want. However, we know from that Yoshi interview that we know that they're definitely looking towards things that have never existed prior. And you can even look that, like, while scythes have existed in other Final Fantasy games, Reaper has not really. And while Sage technically did in, like, 4 and some other ones, it's never existed in this way. And the new lists are wholesale new. So we're already halfway there.
Gunbreaker did it too. Gunbreaker was a reinvention. As a concept, people were like, well, this one character has a gunblade, this one, and it's like, squall. But as a playable class like this, Gunbreaker, they've had to pull that out of basically thin air.
Yeah, you're totally right. It does start to move away from that archetype even from there. And so because of that, I looked at that. My brain always goes to the easy, like the associations to prior existing Final Fantasy, which is probably no longer what we should always be doing. The funny thing is, I also think about either Corsair or for like a job like Waka from Final Fantasy X, that you can introduce a luck mechanic like the slots mechanic from his Limit Break or something like that, where you have to, if you introduce a luck mechanic like the Dancer's Feathers, you need to make sure you're doing something that there's enough luck that balances each other's out, because just RNG is not fun. But the benefit of something with Blitzball, like a Blitzball style job, which I'm not arguing I necessarily want, just it's what my brain thinks about, is that you could totally see a Blitzball style game existing in Mericidia or the New World. And the reason that it hasn't shown up in Eorzea or, most of the 3 great continents prior is because those places have been so removed from the 3 great continents. But yeah, other than that, the ones that I think about have already been said by my fellow Archons.
So, Elio,
okay.
Somebody from Twitch chat actually pointed out how we could get your scouting gear melee, but it actually be arranged. Have the Corsair share gear with Ninja.
Right.
And then for those people that aren't really digging the Ninja aesthetic, but really do like that two-handed thing, then maybe we have some more roguish glamours for them to wear.
There you go. Oh, Chris, Gambler Lady Luck. Yeah, exactly. That was my idea for you could add that to Corsair to give him that sort of that vibe.
Yeah, I agree, because that was in 11, Corsair and the Gambler class were sort of fused anyway.
So to really take what you guys suggested and drive it into kind of the conspiracy of it and give it a little more weight than it should have, because they've told us nothing. Yoshimi hasn't even shown us a t-shirt at FanFest yet. What I would say is, in the past, he's talked about wanting to accommodate multiple player types when they add jobs. So assuming we're still getting plural jobs, he's going to want to reach out to as many. He said that if we ever add multiple jobs, because of the number of players that pick DPS, there should always be a DPS. So it's not going to be healer tank. Healers and tanks largely feel like they're already kind of in a good spot. We got 2 shield, 2 direct. The tanks, if anything, like I think Dark Knight and Warrior are starting to blend a little bit. And so like I think if anything, they've shown we got a lot of identity within tanks. We don't need more people splitting the identity up unless we're going to add more diversity to the role as a role. So I would assume it's a double DPS expansion in 7.0, assuming we're getting 2 base jobs, and God, please give us a limited job. Based on that, I would say a melee DPS and a ranged, just ranged grouping it, gives us the most diversity of players. So Ninja needs a buddy. I think Corsair would be a great, like a close ranged pistol. Then we would have the ability to shoot things as a tank, shoot things as a ranged, shoot things. All we would need is a reason to shoot our friends as a healer, and we would have a complete party of just, shooting people. And then over on the range side of things, I would hope it's a magic, just because I'm hoping that we're heading to Mercidia. And so the Arcanists come from the islands in the South Sea that we're going to pass. If you go due south from Thabnair, Mercidia's down there. And so I would hope that we go back and we find the original Arcanists, and they're like, I know you thought we had 2 job stones. We actually had 3. Please don't actually link the experience. Please break them apart. That's just confusing to new players. But I would hope we get another magical job for me, just because of the lore behind it.
If we get
That's
one
my
job,
hope.
if we get one job, it's going to be a caster, in my opinion, because we haven't had a caster since Red Mage. Like in my mind, we even had Dancer and Shadowbringers, and I think you're right that we shouldn't think like prescriptively that just because that's the order, it must be that order.
Mhm.
But I do think that you could also see a lot of ways in which 7.0 could, in my mind, if we assume we're going to Mirror City, which I think is the safest bet, not the only bet, but the safest bet. The idea of going on a newfound adventure with the Warrior of Light's job for once being a caster rather than a tank or a melee, I think would be a good time to do it. So
I love that.
think
We need a dot class, right? Now that summoners are in theory getting closer to summoning, we need a dot class if we're going to, from an MMO complete the feature list standpoint.
They got to figure out how to do it. And then the thing is, Geomancer does support historic Geomancer in other games, and in 11 does support a version of being a dot class. So there's a way to make that work.
The part of me like kind of doesn't want it to be a Geomancer because I've been told Geomancer is going to happen every single expansion, and so far, like I've been
keep the
like,
joke rolling.
Just keep it rolling, just like Work the Game
When
hates
we get
Bard.
Geomancer, the game ends.
Yeah, guys, like you do know that is the like Yoshi P says, and it shut it down. We had a Geomancer, the code can't support it. Now, like I think as we move on, there's a lot of historic, a lot of lore as it relates to Geomancer. And that's what I'm kind of watching to see as we build into 7.0, because Yoshi P likes to put out various hints within the game. And we saw that a little bit. And I think, I don't know if anybody called it. So if there was a YouTuber or content creator out there that's like Sage beforehand, but we all felt like it's like definitely we're going to get a healer. And then we were going to get, something else. And so Reaper felt like pretty good extension, especially with the t-shirts. But Sage, we're like, oh, and then it's like, oh, that actually makes sense. We've seen that happen in the past, etc. But we've seen a lot of lore as it relates to Geomancers that also, in a way, reflect off of the Astrologian. And so Astrologian in the stars, and then there is some Earth and time magic that Astro had, but they've kind of pulled out the time magic from Astro's toolkit. And so within Geomancer, like it could be something interesting. I'd love to see a dot, like a dot mage. Like I am a dotter, and that's what I do. Man, like I'm starting to kind of lean that, but the player in me, the Final Fantasy Tactics vet in me wants and loves and would just lose my mind if we got a time mage. Being that we've seen time magic in and of itself get pulled out, they could do that within dots. You could almost in a way like you could put on your dots, and then as a part of a time mage, you could literally sit here and say speed up time. So those dots all just kind of pop off at once. So you have the ability to dot and you have the ability to spike all within the concept of time magic in and of itself. And that's something that I still like. Final Fantasy XI just celebrated its 20th anniversary. The director's talking about like, man, I'd love to make a new expansion. I'd love to redo our dev environment. All these things that he's like, he would love to do. And I would love to make that happen. We just got to get, Ninja Tyler Blevins to fund that with his 1 million pledge. It's like, come on, guys, we're going to crowdfund Square Enix doing this thing for us. But if they announced a time age within 11, I would like that would be insane too. I've always wanted that aspect, and people made the argument that there's, Red Mage has some of that. Like, what would you do? And so when it comes down to balancing, I guess the question, kind of the final question here, and what I'm kind of feeling ultimately. Are we thinking like, yes, we're not going to count like a limited job because Chris and I, we think that they definitely I want to see them do the Puppet Master or the Beast Master or help both, but not counting that as a totaling job here.
Give me a Pokemon.
Are we feeling just one job it might be the reality as we go into the next expansion? I think at some point you have to.
Please.
I think it's possible. I don't know if it's 7.0, but I definitely think that inevitably happens.
I think so.
Yeah.
In fact, I think
I'm going with
we
the
get one
definite
job.
yes.
You have to.
I think-
The roles helped kind of stall it, right? Saying, thank God we don't have to keep doing an increasing number of job quests. The role quests and the shared gear helps, but like at some point, you gotta stop.
I agree.
You can't keep just saying like, now we're balancing 23 jobs, 37 jobs, 82 jobs. It's like you gotta slow down, man.
My one argument for why I don't necessarily know if 7.0 will be it is because there's a big benefit to them having 4 and 4 for casters and range DPS if they want to do something like what they've done with healers.
Yeah.
Where, for instance, we already have, you have your red mage and your summoner with their reses, and then you have black mage like true DPS. Imagine your 4th DPS is also a true DPS. It gives you options for balancing and splitting into the future. And that's why 7.0 is the one where I'm like, it could go either way. I lean more on we'll still get 2, but I definitely think you get into 8.0. There's just that has to happen.
Yeah, I can see if they do 2, we get the like a ranged caster and a ranged physical, because you're right. Because then, I mean, while obviously this is just we have 5 within the melee, category, but we do have the 4 tanks, the 4 healers. We technically, I guess you could say, you have 4 casters with blue mage, but still, like, again, I'm kind of putting that in its own system. Yeah. So there's a symmetry that my brain just kind of picks up on, and obviously they're not working on, like, we got to make these roles, symmetrical, because they could still, with the physical range, like chat pointed out, tying a Corsair into that aspect within the rogue, the ninja. And I think that would be really cool to see, personally speaking, especially when you start to, like, say, hey, what are you kind of gearing up? And it's like, oh, I got a Corsair, and I would love that for the Corsair. The only reason why I think I'm biased towards Time Mage, hands down. Let's just admit it. But then there's going to be a part of me that would be literally tickled if, like, it's not if it's not Geomancer, and we just keep kicking that can down the road, because people have been, like, they were saying, like, Shadowbringers, man, Geomancer, it's absolutely Geomancer. I'm like, no way. And then Endwalker, it's absolutely Geomancer. I was like, I feel like I'm like, I'm so sorry, but you're wrong. Like, there's just no way it's going to be Geomancer. Now I think it could probably have a deeper connection with it, a greater chance, but a part of me just wants to continue that meme.
So the reason everybody was going Geomancer going into Shadowbringers is because we had Swallow's Compass, right?
Yep.
And so they were like,
that's why.
They were like, okay, so they planted the lore for this job. Obviously, we're gonna get it. And then Endwalker comes up, and they're like, I remember that they planted the lore for this job, but now in this one, they have further planted the lore for that job.
Yeah. In my mind, Geomancer only makes sense if you do Hingashi stuff. Like, if you don't do that, adding it justifying it becomes weird. And I will say, like, the one I did call Reaper was one of the few times that I actually called something correctly. Part of the reason I don't want Geomancer to be right is because I want my viewers to dunk on me, which I know they inevitably will when I'm wrong. But with Ranjit, I was like, okay, that is what the new job is. Not that literally, but some interpretation of this character. This idea of Scythe mixed with Persona, whether with like familiar beast. And then we get what we get with Reaper and the lore there.
Well, I like that lore. I really have enjoyed playing Reaper.
I like to watch the world burn a little bit. So I want King Moogle Ultimate as the 6.3. It's probably Omega, but I want to see, like, Blue Mage Phase 7 shenanigans. Blue Mage Moogle just wrecking people. But what I'm hopeful for with the new job is whatever it is, based on his last interview, that the naming, even if it is a Time Mage like Brian's asking for, name it something so that we just get to watch everybody speculate. I hope he names it something loose enough that we don't know what we're getting. So it's just like, oh, it's Purple Mage. That's all I'm telling you.
All right.
Have fun, internet. Like, the guy has so
the synergist.
He's the synergist. Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh.
Purple Mage is a dot mage. Just saying.
Yeah. And then on that kind of note, then it's like you can kind of look at the history though. Like, it'd be kind of neat to kind of pull out, like, out of the hat of some of these, like, random jobs, like from Final Fantasy VI, the painter. It's like, oh, interesting. Like, and then it's like, and then there's this, like, with Bard having its own lore type system. It'd be interesting to see if they were like, oh, let's go ahead and start having these jobs actually have some kind of other kind of non-combat style, some kind of system that people can kind of play around with. Be interesting. All right, you guys ready to move into our next topic?
I've got one small tangent.
Okay, yeah, go for it.
So we've been talking about jobs. What do you guys think is going to be the poster job for the next expansion? Cover art job.
I don't know what job, but caster. I think so.
We haven't had a caster on in a while. Like, Black Mage comes to mind for 2.0.
Wow.
That was very thematic. I think essentially, yeah. I think I would like to see a caster. We've seen tank. Healer. Man, I don't see them doing a healer as a part of that. Like, I don't know. Like, I think healing has a very like niche kind of role based off of when I look at like Duty Finder stuff, but I think caster could be something kind of interesting because you could kind of, market big booms or something. Would like the question though is like, if it is caster, if it ends up being a black mage again, do you think you're going to see lots of people calling out Yoshi P like biased from his love of black mage? The reason it was a black mage is because Yoshi P.
The thing about healer too is you have Eorzean and Alfino already like to represent that somewhat in the like party balance. Like, so I would wonder.
I think that we get a summoner as the poster job in 7.0. I think I'm pretty confident because Mericidia, Bahamut, Eggies, there's all sorts of primals down there. It just seems to make sense to me.
That's a good one.
I think that'd be great. I think I would like to see it. Like that hands down. I'd like to see it. All right, let's go and jump into, let's see here, screen share, screen 2, bringing it up for you guys. And let's see if we can do, does this layout look good? Perfect. All right, guys. So Yoshi P recently did an interview going over 6.1. I've kind of highlighted a few things. I'd love to get y'all's perspective on it as a team. The first one being, since the implementation of the duty support in 6.1. Actually, before we jump in, I'm going to do this a little bit differently. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thanks so much. Smash like and subscribe to the Eorzean archives as a part of this highlight clip. We're talking about Yoshi P's 6.1 interview, his plans for the future, and the success of duty support with the fine team that runs the Eorzean archives. Be sure to subscribe to them. Be sure to like this video if you guys like Final Fantasy XIV content, or like this video if you don't like Final Fantasy XIV content. Man, I'm going to let you choose either option. But guys, we're going to jump in. I want to get your perspective on this. Since the implementation of the duty support in 6.1, the number of new players starting the game has increased, which is, I honestly am not surprised by that, especially in Japan. People who are hesitant about the MMO genre are coming in because he still thinks there's potential for further growth into the Japanese market. He also says that he's happy with how much feedback the new players, saying that it's easier and more fun than they imagined. What do you guys feel about that? The duty support system, the MMO, and the single player game brushing up against each other.
I talked a bunch. Issa, and you want to go again?
Okay, so all I've got to say on this one is, duh. There are tons of people I know that really, really loved Final Fantasy that absolutely slept on 14 because they didn't want to have to deal with people. Add into the fact that it makes at least the early game, right, a whole lot easier when you're a DPS. It gets rid of that annoyance of the 15-minute queue. It makes a whole lot of sense to me that a whole bunch of people that are looking for more of that single player Final Fantasy experience are going to start coming in.
Yeah, I agree. I can name at least 5 or 6 friends I have that play 14 as a single player game almost already.
Yeah, I'm utterly not surprised, and even more than just not being surprised that it's boosted numbers, especially in Japan, where there's a lot of more reticence sometimes to play in social spaces. The fact to me is that I'm not worried about the long term. Like, I've seen people voice worrying about, oh, well, then people won't play together, and like, what's the point of it being an MMO? It's like, well, one, trials still exist, and two, the thing is, what I see, I've seen this happen already, is that people get it and that gets them in, and then they end up socializing and joining FCs, and like it boosts things. It doesn't end up like limiting things.
I think Fido brings up a valid point as well, that like part of this is how are they separating this information out, because they also, like, 6.1 was the first thing after 6.0. And during 6.0, they restricted character creation. They restricted game sales. So when both those things go away, they're like, wow, there's a lot more people coming in. Yes. Like, some of that is also like, when you literally said no new players, you got no new players. And so like some of that is just like, you're also just making it a better new player experience across the board, not just with this. But the story in particular is a weird thing, because if you have somebody who likes the multiplayer experience, they're like, cool, I'm going to hop in with my friends. We're all going to play. What do we do? Well, step one, you're going to have to play by yourself. Okay, that's not uncommon in games. That's even true in like Forza. I can't play with my friends for the first like little bit. No big deal. What is that? Like a couple hours tops? No big deal. awesome. I got to the first dungeon. So now we can play together? Yeah. So we go into the first dungeon together. Then what? Well, you got to drop party and you got to go back and do a bunch more solo stuff. So you've pissed that group off. But then you say, okay, but that's fine. We'll talk to the single player group. I'm in this for story. I can play this as a single player game? Absolutely. 100%. Until you get to level 16. And then you have to find people. Well, I don't want to play with people. Sorry. So like the nice thing about this is the first time we've seen them allow either path to be pure. So like the one thing from my perspective is they've straddled that line where you were always, there was this argument of like, can it be played as a single player game? No, it can't. Like you cannot clear the dungeons, the trials, Crystal Tower is required. You can't. It's not a single player game because you cannot clear it single player. And this says, okay, well, now we can discuss that. It's the first time we've ever been able to discuss this as an option, especially because in 7.0, they said they want to go back and possibly add 8-man and even Crystal Tower support to the duty support system, which would truly let somebody be almost entirely solo if they wanted to. I think that's awesome. Let people play this game whatever way they want. As a counterpoint, though, how would you guys feel if they then also said, based on this popularity, should we go back and make a multiplayer version of the game where I can do MSQ in a group where if I want to go in and beat up in a single player instance with 8 people, does that really break anything if I want to like do the last fight of Endwalker with a friend?
You know, last fight. Okay.
I picked one that
Yeah.
as an example that I know would make people go, that doesn't work. Who cares?
No. But I'm always up for the discussion, right? Like my druthers on the situation, right? Is that to me totally underserves what that moment is supposed to be as a one person versus one person pinnacle. Like that is what that moment's supposed to be. That's narrative speaking. Now, mechanically though, is that better? It's like, well, here's the difficulty though, is like, then you've got to retool Xenos' AI to make sense for a fight that's more than a single player mechanic, because a lot of his attacks are like relatively straightforward to dodge as a single individual, right? I mean, like, I guess at what point do you also say challenge is necessary in terms of the, not like trials and dungeons, but to your point, the, like the instanced fights, because if it's not, then yeah, I guess the argument is go for it. I personally more prefer the idea of hybrid systems where it's like, okay, yeah, there are times where you're going to have moments alone to experience, like the same way that you can't read a book with a friend. Like you can both read the book and talk about the book. And I get that games are different, right? So you shouldn't apply the book logic, but like there's a part of me that viscerally is like, but like, isn't that kind of the intent though? But yeah, that's hard. That's hard. That balance is what they've been struggling with this whole time, right?
Twitch chat has provided the perfect solution to this. Get rid of the instance and Xenos altogether.
Just delete Xenos. Like we deleted him at the end of Endwalker.
It feels nuts to me that MSQ can't be a more shared experience.
Yeah.
That I can't say, I want to go into the New Game Plus. Cool. What chapter would you like to do in New Game Plus? Wherever Brian's at. I just got him into the game and I just want to play with him. Can you just sync it so that we're working on the same objectives together? Well, when you do solo 100%. Fights, you have to do those solo. That's fine. I'll go get a drink when I come back. Catch me up. But the fact that he has to go off and, talk to 6 people and pet 4 lambs and slay a bear, and I can't do that with him is ridiculous.
New Game Plus.
Stop making me drop group and stop making it hard for us to see each other's objectives. That's what I love about the solo. This is the first time they've said people who play differently are welcome here too. And I want that to my answer is not, okay, well, they shouldn't be allowed to play solo. No, it's okay, cool. Now let other people who also play differently get something as well.
Yeah, it's the hybrid that essentially I think that Final Fantasy XIV needs to address. And so as we jump into kind of some other points that he's making, this kind of ties into just my general feedback is that I love 5-man crystalline conflict. If they bring Feast back, I hope it's 5-man. While I'm not delusional, I would love them to go and put 5-man dungeon. And maybe Criterion ends up being kind of that fit. I think 5 is just a really good number, especially for an MMORPG in terms of balancing and getting people running through the system itself, especially like in the case of 14. But I don't see them redoing the old dungeons. However, all that being said is that when he looks at it's just the highlights of the feedback from Crystalline Conflict, removing role restrictions, thinking about it, bringing in like adventure plates for dungeons, like that's kind of the big, kind of like the thing that makes me excited. One of the things that I think adventure plates and what they have is that social aspect, but we need that hybrid, especially with the duty support system. Like what Chris talks about, like you're doing the single player fight, you got to drop party. Like I even brought that feedback up to Yoshi P directly in the Fan Fest, and I was like, just give me the ability that when I'm playing with you, that I can level sync down to your level, so I don't have to like run behind you, party up for a fate, so we can play together and then disconnect. I think essentially there's a lot of man out there, a lot of 3-mans out there. And ultimately then it's like, especially if you want to have that, like, hey, I'm having a really good solo experience, right? So we talk about those players coming in. Imagine it's like, hey, I got my spouse to come join me, but we really don't want to run this with other people because we're nervous. We were having that kind of frustration or that kind of like anxiety. Imagine be like, well, we're together. Let's just bring in 2 of the support people, or, and then all of a sudden that kind of solves that problem. And so you can still have a social experience while at the same time not necessarily having to interact with people that you don't want to. That actually would make it more advantageous for me to play with my kids, so as Maddie gets older and I kind of have her run around, she's created a character, and but we're not like actively like going out, and the fact the duty support system's there has me excited, because then she's not going to necessarily have to worry about absolutely being amazing at this game because she just doesn't have that level of interest yet. But I would really enjoy it if I was like, oh, I'm logged in and she's logged in and we're going to go run this dungeon together, and I can show her the ropes while sitting next to her, while at the same time like there with her, so to experience her exploration aspect of it, because she'll want to explore, right? She'll want to go to every nook and cranny, and running in with a group of people who are just trying to get it done isn't gonna work for them.
No. Yeah, there's no question. I think both of you guys are right in terms of you should be able to like 2 and 2, right? You should be able to new game plus. Let me go to a specific quest. What? Like, I get that you have it broken up into chunks, but you should just allow me to be like, I want to go to this quest in Shadowbringers. Heck, I just personally want that for me because it makes like getting footage of specific dialogue easier sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, I don't know about you guys, but one thing that I tend to take comfort in is that like I believe that the team's listening and trying to get there most of the time, which is usually when I get stressed with other dev teams, is that like it's like, well, there's just like, yeah, we want these things, but it's not going to happen. Whereas this is like, oh no, we could get there, especially with all the changes we've seen to MSQ the past 2 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, WoW, Pets of Warcraft says, WoW will let you actually do the same kind of quest as your friends. When you leave the party, those quests vanish. And so they've got and WoW actually adapted from Final Fantasy XI and how it's got its level sync system worked. And in fact, we know we've got level sync already in the game. It just I'd like to see more hybrid, and that actually kind of tied into one of the things I didn't talk about in the new jobs is like I'd like to see some hybrid aspects of jobs at some point. Like they could expand the entire job system without even adding in a new job. You just kind of start thinking of like, well, we have these systems. What if we started to allow people to mix and match and do all these crazy weird concoctions? Now I want to know, what do you guys think? Blue Mage Battle Royale PvP mode, is that something that excites you, or is that something that has you a little bit concerned? What do you think?
That sounds fun. Like, as long as it's isolated, who cares? Like I'll go do that for a couple times a week. Like that's I'm not a huge Blue Mage person, but that does sound fun.
Fields of Cartano, make it happen.
Yeah, I'm not big on PvP, but I definitely play it.
I mean, that's like the definition of how the community got into Crystalline Conflict, right?
Yeah,
like I'm not big on PvP, but I'll play it. Like that's how we got here.
Well,
Chris, I'll help you with
ahead.
Crystal Tower, but I've got one more match. Okay.
Yeah, just one more match. That's the thing that one of the things that when they talk about removing the role bindings for PvP, Chris and I said back like earlier on, I was like, they have to get rid of that because nobody wants to wait 30 plus minutes, especially because the role bindings didn't tell you what was needed. I was like, even if they keep the role bindings and say, listen, we need a healer. Hey, listen, we need a range. Like I just want to play PvP. Because and what that ended up doing is like I just wouldn't play any other game that had PvP because like you look at it right now. Actually, I got some good news about Overwatch. They've canceled Overwatch 2 and they're bringing all that into Overwatch, like as it should have been from the start. Because it just
that's what the announcement was. They're like, it's Overwatch 2, and all the people who wanted a sequel, it was great. And then like all the people who wanted it in, they're like, we're just gonna kind of carry it on. Then why'd you put a 2 on there?
Yeah,
you're just confusing people.
So and it's like, but at its core, it's like, all right, let's just, what I want to play this. And then these games are built for that. And so Final Fantasy 14 always kind of felt so restrictive. And then you saw tools have to build up. But I think what you see now is that if I want to play, I can queue and I'm not having to wait forever. I just want to play. I just want to get in. And that's actually a really good thing. It's quick, and it's remained quick, with the exception when Black Mage became God mode. I read those patch notes for Black Mage before, and then Chris and I talked about it in a video. Like, why did we have an A patch like that? We've never done that before. I don't know if we'll ever see another one like that again, because at the end of the day, I was like, I read those patch notes, and I was like, this is. I thought, and they're like, Black Mage isn't doing that good, so we had to boost it up. And I was like, every time I played Black Mage, I was like, I do really well. So it's like, it's a really, like, I always felt like it was like a really good job, but it clearly, like, it's got its challenges. And then they went and made those changes. I was like, those are insane. Like, that's going to make me just like freaking even destroy. And what it did make me, what happened was I just couldn't get a match because I was trying to queue as Black Mage and they only let you have one on each team. But it's like, yeah, Black Mages became like OP AF. And that was just so funny.
Like,
but
man, why wouldn't they just wait? And then they came out and they're like, man, that really didn't land well. We should have just waited. And it's like, well, who told you to put an A patch in?
Yeah.
Like,
Devs got overeager.
It's like you ask a friend to come over for dinner at 7 and they show up at 6 and they're like, sorry, I'm gonna have to take a phone call. I wasn't ready to be here. I didn't tell you to be here. Like, why are you telling me? Like,
it was just that, we're all learning here. It's like, so I guess the question is like, I'll be curious to see if we see any other additional A patches in the future. Now, the last thing kind of the interview, the last thing the kind of interview kind of focuses on is Ultimate. And so in here, it seems to confirm that obviously 6.3 is the next Ultimate. And then the question is that, we kind of speculate, are we actually going to get 3 Ultimates this expansion, being that we actually only got one last expansion to kind of offset that with the pandemic? What do you think about how they did Ultimate, especially how it relates to the lore with Heaven's Word? Did you guys watch the race at all? What do you think?
I think it was super cool. I think what they did was really fun and interesting, but also, to my mind, because of how they've always treated the minstrel, was very in line with everything else we've seen. Like, with what Ultimates and EX have always been. It's like, yeah, it's always been, hey, what if this musical man made a fan fiction of what you did? And so once they did what they did for this Ultimate, I was like, while this is more wild, it's still, that's not shocking. But it I think it was also really good to show the idea of like, hey, it's like this Tolkienian idea of it could have been different, but it couldn't have been better. And it's like, yeah, maybe Orshafon would have survived, but that might not have been for the best ultimately. So
I thought that what they did with it was really great. I don't think that it's something that we have any right to expect of them every time.
Nope.
If for some reason we do get 3 Ultimates and that becomes like a recurring thing, that's cool. I would only expect like maybe one of them to have that same kind of level in an expansion. And even that, I think it's only going to be one of those things of, oh my God, I've got this really cool idea. Whatever you do, don't tell Koji. He'll try to put a joke in it. But it was really, really cool getting to see that story play out. It was really awesome watching everybody do it and watching like everyone not actually doing the Ultimates reactions, because I don't know if you guys hopped into many of those streams while they were live, but all of the save him that kept going on was just great. So I think the Ultimates like that are really, really good for like these community effects, right? But it's definitely not something that I expect to see a lot of.
Yeah, I agree. They have to ration the sheer amount of effort they put into that, but it was exactly what I, as a player who's focused more on the lore, the character, the story, it's exactly what I wanted out of an Ultimate. So yeah, I was really happy to see it. I'm also a Hoshafant stan, so
it makes you wonder if next is, do we do Warring Triad, or we do go into like Omega and stuff? Because My question is, we have ultimate, we already had Alexander, because there was no really like trial series in A Realm Reborn the same way that we start getting in Heaven's Word on.
Mm-hmm.
So like whether or not they do that, because the trial series was effectively part of Ultimate Weapons Refrain, right? So do we see the Warring Triad, especially with how important the Warring Triad is, especially because we're dealing with the Void of Mericidia potentially in the future? It's like that could be a really good time to make it an ultimate and get attention on that. But at the same time, I could also imagine a world in which they skip over it.
I don't think we're getting 3. But as the resident pessimist of Work to Game, I don't think we're getting one in 6.3. And people are like, but you guys said. No, I repeated the roadmap, which said we're getting in 6.3. If you'll watch my coverage, I said I'll believe it when I see it. Like, I just, knowing that we just now got our Shadowbringers second ultimate, and I understand that the reasons were valid, it does not mean that the end result was any different. Some of the reasons are reasons that are not as prevalent now, but if you go back and watch dev panels on Ultimates, they have also talked about the fatigue it is on the development team and on the internal team. And so those reasons, as far as I know, haven't gone away. And so to ask a dev team, and if we don't get to this expansion, as far as I'm concerned, we are missing one. Mm-hmm. So like we would have to get 3 for the mat and then go back to 2 every expansion, because they said, oh, we're not cutting it, we're delaying it. I'm like, as far as I can tell, that's the same thing, because we're still going to end up short one. And so, just to kind of put that pessimist, I bet we're getting it in 6.5. It wouldn't make sense to release it alongside a Savage. I think we get it in 6.5. And I think the amount of Omega references, it makes sense for it to be Omega. I think Warring Triad was the leading theory prior to all of this Omega, constant lore dump. I'm still King Mugamog all the way, just because, like, I said it to Happy when we were on State of the Realm, and he goes, do you just want to watch people suffer? I was like, I don't plan on clearing it. Yes, I just want to watch people suffer. I'm not doing it. I'm here to watch. I don't know. We'll see. I'd love to be wrong. I'd love to be wrong and it being 6.3. I just don't see how a piece of content that's that expensive to build and develop can be ready that quickly.
I was shocked when they said 6.3. I was like, oh, 6.5. Wait, there's a 3 on the end of that? I was just like,
yeah.
Why would you do that to yourself?
Why? I think at the end of the day, if they hit 6.3, I think I'm going to be really happy for the rating community, because I think they were so hungry for so long. It's one of the things that's like, when you look at content and content creation, one of the things that's really big within the 14 community is watching people clear the story. And so it's like, from a content creator's perspective, like, you are incentive to be late so people can go and play the story, and then they can come see how you react to it. But that is kind of the biggest pie. Like, if you're going to say, here's the thing. And so lore content, like you said, it's a niche within a niche. Like, it's like, like you want, and people are like, oh, we want more of it. It's like, do you? like in terms of analytics, like maybe, okay, I'll believe it when I see it. But then when it comes down to kind of the whole, like the rating community, I was like, they were starving for a long time. They had the delay, they had the ultimate get kicked out. And then you start thinking about it, it was over a year between Savage raids. And now it looks like we're going to have a little bit, smoother transition within the Endwalker series. And namely because I think they're giving them the 4 months, they're giving them a week off to rest. And I think that's important, because I think what we'll end up seeing is like, at first it's going to feel like, the train's slowing down a little bit. But I think in the long run, you'll actually see but the quality raised up, it got improved, and overall the player experience has been great. Now that concludes the podcast show. Guys, let's go around, plug anything you want. We'll start with you, Elio.
The
floor is yours, sir.
Yes, so come check out the Eorzean archives. If you want to subscribe and check out our good content, please do. You can also come join our Discord, where we talk about Final Fantasy XIV lore and all that good stuff. On top of that, I'm currently doing an MSQ replay that I do every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. So if you want to catch back up on that, or you want to watch as Chris is ahead of me and makes fun of me and watches maliciously as I'm about to do something stupid, you can also do that. I think other than that, I think Naniri and Issa have other things I'd like to touch on.
All I'd say is, we've got the site as well as the YouTube channel, where we post various sort of articles, including breakdowns of the lore and the etymologies of all the duties in the game. I'm currently writing one for Keeper of the Lake. Go check that out. And yeah, we're always happy to see more engagement on YouTube as well.
I was just told to go there. I just finished the Ice Heart stuff, and they said you got to go to Keeper of the Lake. And all I could think was the Monty Python reference of a king. I didn't vote for you. A watery tart lobbing scimitars is no basis for a form of government.
That's such a cruel thing to call Midgard Summer.
All right. Well, they have already covered us, so I'm actually going to take this opportunity to shout out a couple of other people in the lore community that you guys should take a look at. If you somehow miss Synodic Scribe, you guys should really check him out. Really awesome artwork on all of his stuff. Stout Helm always has some hilarious takes, and Elio knows I was going to say this, but there's nothing better than just listening to Chronicler of Lore. All of them are on YouTube. Give them a look.
Excellent shout outs. Chris, you want to have any final thoughts before we wrap up the podcast?
I'm doing Crystal Tower right after this, and people have been asking where they can see all of this with my ridiculous voices and stuff. I'm no Sebby Webby, so it is what it is. People are like, I don't think that's what that person's voice would sound like. I was like, well, I have bad news for you. And so if you want to see that, that's all going over to Gaming Lore Kinda is where we're uploading that. So if there's specific parts of the story, that is all slowly making its way over there. In July, I'll be doing the 2.5 and binding coils and kind of wrapping up what I'm going to get done for ARR. And then in August, pre 6.2, there will be a lore week on the calendar on Twitch when I'm going to be doing Heaven's Word for my first time.
Exciting.
Very excited. I'm looking forward to that. And guys, you're already in the right spot. Worked a game, Ginger Prime, Ginger Gaming Radio, Ginger JRPG, Ginger Yeah, like I do a lot of stuff, so I'm weird. Thanks so much, guys, for tuning in. Thanks everybody for watching the show live. And if you're watching this as an archive, you are awesome as well. Sound off in the comments, like, favorite, subscribe, and share for more Final Fantasy XIV and MMORPG content. Anyway, this has been the Crystal Core Radio. I've been your host, Brian, and hopefully you enjoyed the podcast. Hopefully we'll see you in our next one. But until then, take care. All right, we did it.
Can you imagine if for the challenging content community, we have a full set of Savage tiers on time, and then we have whatever this new dungeon system is that's supposed to be challenging.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have new deep dungeon climbs, and we get another ultimate in 6.3 when many casual ultimate groups are still struggling with phase 6 right now and looking down the barrel at August, and they're like, oh my God, what if I'm not done in time? Like,
dude,
for a community that was just given such a crappy drought, this is a packed expansion from my perspective.
Yeah.
Drinking out of a fire hose. That is exactly what that would be for everybody that's not in that world first tier, right?
Yeah, the world first people are like, it's not a big deal. We cleared it week 2. We're just re-clearing in 2 hours. It's like,
the thing that's so weird to me about them putting that second ultimate for 6.3 is, to me, that has to mean that someone on that team is thinking, let's try to get a third one in 6.55 or something crazy. Because like otherwise, why put it there? Why not push it? Why 6.3? Why not give yourself?
Why not announce 6.5 and then just drop it at 6.3?
Yeah.
Hey, it's ready, and we want to get started on the next one. So
there you go.
So here's an idea. Maybe they've had this one pretty much done for a while. They just didn't want to drop it in like 6.55. They can't drop it at 6.0, right?
So they are different teams. The different ultimates are different teams. It's not one ultimate team that carries on. And part of that is because they've talked about, it's not like, oh, it's because everybody wants their turn. It's because once somebody finishes their turn, they don't want to go again. So they're burning out devs. And so they have to light up new devs every ultimate. And
that interview with Asma.
And so it is possible that you're right. It is possible that they ignited the 6.3 ultimate to get it ready to be ready for 6.1. And then when DSR got stalled, they were just given extra time and they're running in parallel.
Yeah, I think that's probably most likely what's happening. Guys, this has been a great show. Appreciate y'all so much. Julie needs the office here in a little bit, so I was like, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap up and all that. So thanks. Go watch Chris on Twitch do Crystal Tower. think that's
Will
going to be
do.
exciting. And guys,
I'm getting ready to boost a character as we speak.
Ooh, very
Good
nice.
thing Crystal Tower ever comes up again in the MSQ.
Ever, like not at all, not once.
Thanks so much for having
The
us,
first
guys.
time I met Graha, he's like, "You know who I am?" And I was like, "No." And he goes, "I knew you knew," or
I knew
something
you
like
knew.
that. Like, and I'm like, "But I didn't. Like, I still have questions." And he's like, "Yeah, we go way back." Do we?
I pressed escape. Why did I press escape? All right, guys, I'm hitting
Agnes,
end
I haven't
broadcast.
seen you.
I'm gonna wave it out, and we will see
Cheers.
you guys. It spins, so